All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being at Reinforce in this session. It's been a busy couple of days for everyone here, so I hope you made a lot of connections and learned a lot from peers and colleagues and all the sessions we offered. For this last session we have today, it's about transforming security failures into organizational strength. Now, as we're wrapping up, how about we end with a chuckle? So let's start with this comic. I'll give a few seconds to look at it and ingest it. I love this. This is the Awkward Yeti comic strip. You're welcome to take an image of the QR code and follow more. This is in particular brain and heart. So in this case, they're going through life, going through the same mistakes swamp, and asks the heart, did we do it wrong again? And the brain says, we may never know. Today, we're going to learn how we can know, so we don't do it wrong again. In today's agenda, we're going to talk about security incidents and how to address the aftermath. We can analyze, do post-incident analysis. We'll walk through the components to include in this. We're going to do a simple case study, how to build resilience, and how to replicate this at your own company. So take it back with you. All right, if you're in security incident, we've been there where we have a 3 a.m. call. We have frantic Slack messages, war rooms, trying to resolve this. And as soon as we resolve it, we might have 2 paths. We either are relaxed and think like, hey, high five everybody, close this ticket, be ready for the next one. Or you take the step to evolve. You learn, adapt, and make the next attacker work harder. So at Amazon, what we do is we take step 2, the second half of this, with a retrospective, which we call the correction of errors. So what is a COE and why should we care? So post-incident analysis, a type of it is a retrospective, which is a correction of errors. We'll call it COE from now on. The intention of a COE is to objectively and anonymously document what happened. This type of retrospective is not about naming, shaming, blaming, or asking for forgiveness. You really just want to document the incident to learn from the event. You want to dig for the root causes, not just the symptoms. And when you have enough insights, you want to create smart action items that are specific, that are measurable, achievable, related, and time-bound. What I like to add to this is you want to make sure that you include success criteria. And the reason why we have this is because you want to have the opportunity to measure your action items in the future. Did they produce intended results? So with success criteria, you could also include enablement campaigns and awareness campaigns for this. All right, so what should your COE answer? Once you go through your incident response, you should address how we can detect the failures faster. You really want to work on reducing the mean time to recovery with this information that you collect and prevent similar failures from happening again. And at the end, control the blast radius and reduce the future impact of incidents similar to this. Well, what should a COE include? I'll start with, at Amazon, our COEs are actually reviewed by our CEOs, Andy Jassy and Matt Garman. Matt Garman has a weekly security meeting every Friday, which includes reviewing COEs. And the reason why I say this is because you want your COEs to be reviewed at the executive level as well. So for an executive, you want to start with an elevator speech, something that your executive can quickly scan and know what happened, who, what, when, where, why, how did it happen, and how do we intend to prevent this from happening again. So that is your elevator speech. High level, if your executive wants to go into more detail, you provide the rest of the information, starting with the impact to the customer. What is it that we want to prevent from happening again? And you want to show this with quantifiable metrics and the timeline of events. Sometimes the incident, you might just focus on that single incident that you encountered, but you really want a detailed timeline of how far back maybe what contributed to the incident happened days before, hours before, minutes before, and maybe we didn't realize we were going through this threat detection or incident until much later. So your timeline should be pretty thorough so that by the time you get to your 5 whys is when you start understanding going past the symptoms to the root cause. So when I talk about 5 whys, let's just give an example of a data plane failure. So let's say you're asked, well, why weren't responders paged? Oh, well, because there was a misconfigured event bus. Okay. Why were there no alarms for the event bus? Oh, we had no integration for the event workflows. Why were there no tests then? We're depending on downstream monitoring. Ooh, okay, so why did the downstream monitoring fail? Well, we had infrequent canary runs. Why do we have infrequent canary runs? Because we were relying on default configuration. We did not question if the default configuration should be followed. See how I kept asking and asking and asking until we got to the root cause? So you want to get to that same approach. That way you get closer to prevention beyond just mitigation. Once you ask all those whys, then you get to that's what we were doing wrong. That's what we missed. That's what the mechanism was gapping. So those are your lessons learned. And from your lessons learned, then you get to take your action items. What are the commitments you're going to make so this doesn't ever happen again? Now this allows you to visualize this. You might have seen this before, it's a fishbone, because then here, I mentioned earlier, an incident might not be just due to one area. It could be multiple things that contribute to it. So a fishbone, think about it, your incident, your problem, think about it like a math equation. Your problem is a function of X. In this case, the problem or the incident you encounter could be a result of, when I speak of people, it's not the individuals. I'll get to what I mean by that. People, process, tools, and the system. So let's think of a simple scenario. So one of them would be like your colleague emailed you code, and the code included credentials. So that raises a security incident. If I look at this and think, well, what area should I start with? Well, let's start with the area of people. From a people perspective, let's assume your colleague is rather new employee, so maybe there were some training gaps, and maybe we had alert fatigue. So in the area of people, the cause is training gaps. In the area of process, the cause could be maybe the runbook didn't explicitly say to communicate code, to communicate code, don't use email. So now you put that under the area of process, the cause is the runbook has some gaps. And then finally, maybe you received this over Microsoft Outlook email, and there could have been some guardrails to check for code or check for credentials so the email wouldn't send. So in the area of tooling and systems, the cause is the gap of missing guardrails. Notice in all of this, I never spoke of the individual. In none of these areas, it's never so-and-so made a mistake. The point is not to talk about the individual, but talk about processes that might have impacted what occurred. This takes the fishbone to a higher level, more dynamic. This transforms the static analysis into dynamic improvement roadmap. Very similar to what we saw earlier, the CDAC is also known as the Toyota method. CDAC is short for cause and effect diagram with the addition of cards. So now, next to each of the facts we encountered earlier, the causes, you can put your corresponding improvement. So in the people area, we covered about lacks of training. So now I know my training is I need to improve the onboarding. And so maybe I need to include HR and training and communications to help with that. In the area I spoke earlier of processes, so the fact was the runbook had some gaps. So maybe it's the systems team, the service team. The improvement is the runbook fix. And finally, in the area of tools and systems, we talked about my emails. So I would include the systems team. By having the visual of the improvement, you're able to see who should I include as well as part of your solution. All right, so this is actually my favorite part about COEs, being able to leverage the data to understand the stories behind this. So let's assume that you work in a financial organization, really large conglomerate, and you have a commercial business, you have a wealth management business, credit card business, and other types. So if you have a COE across, and again, I emailed code, because these businesses might be intentionally ring-fenced, we might not know the issues that occur across, even though they're similar. So they become point-in-time events there and technical improvements there. However, if you metadata tag your COEs, now you can aggregate them for strategic intelligence. So if you tag, you can now aggregate these themes to see, maybe you aggregate by attack vectors, like credential theft, or affected systems, or even mechanisms that worked or didn't work. Create according tags, and you aggregate by themes to be able to see trends. So what I like to see from here is consider information arbitrage. Do any of you guys trade? If you do trading, have you used social media, like tagging social media stories to see what is up and coming, what to invest in? Not the best comparison, but like GameStop, right? GameStop became super attractive due to Reddit conversations. And so people were pretty smart at tagging, seeing the metadata there. In our case, we're going to use that differently. But information arbitrage is when you capitalize on information before it becomes widely known. So from our perspective in security, you want to use information to identify emerging threats and vulnerabilities before they become widespread within your company, or maybe even externally that impacts customers. So in our case, so here the COEs, because we wrote about them, provide qualitative insights that quantitative information will miss. And you can use all that for information arbitrage. Let's say we sampled an analysis and the conversation volume revealed that we saw a spike in API misconfigurations. And that allowed us to see precede a major incident. Or, again, we saw similar IAM issues across business units that don't necessarily talk to each other. But due to those tags, I can see that at the large corporate level and try to address that. And we were able to maybe see early detection of security tool blind spots. So by leveraging this information, you can track themes in the COEs over time. And you can monitor the conversation tags, and maybe a decrease in conversation volume means that you're improving your security posture. And an increase in volume of these tags, maybe that's an emerging risk. And we don't only have to use this for security. Let's say, for example, you have a CRM, and there are a lot of tags about that, like concerns with it. You can start using those tags to determine maybe resource allocation, or capital investment decisions, or annual operating planning insights. So once you tag these things, you can use like Bedrock, AIML, and measure the conversation trends to see the success of your mechanisms you introduce. All right, so I walked earlier about COEs, which are retrospectives for Amazon, and what to include in them. The intention is to be able to leverage qualitative data from the incidents that you encounter and be able to use that as information arbitrage for within your company, or to get ahead of security threats or vulnerabilities that might impact externally by leveraging the data. So how can you take this back to your company? So the first thing you want to do is to create psychological safety. You want to make sure your teams feel healthier and highly supported once they work with the COE and not beat up. Earlier I mentioned that COEs are not intended for shaming, naming, blaming, or asking for forgiveness. It's really about celebrating a comfort that we're willing to share this information, that we're willing to learn. And by reading it with your executives, it's another level of celebration and acknowledgement for anyone who brings these up. Create psychological safety to learn from this and help your peers, your employees feel comfortable to escalate and promote a culture of escalation. You want to use collaborative documentation platforms. It's probably not a good idea to do all this learnings through email, because you can only include so many people on that, and we might get email fatigue. Or maybe like Slack, right? We have limited audiences there. So what we do at Amazon is we have a user interface where we enter these narratives, these COEs, retrospectives, and anyone in Amazon can see them. I work in AWS security side, global services. I can go read the ones from Amazon stores, from Prime, from data centers, and I can learn what other folks are encountering. So you want such a collaborative documentation platform that has a user interface, and it'll store in a data lake. And plus, anyone can have access to do like quick site dashboards from it as well. And now with GenAI, you can use GenAI to write qualitative information from it. You want to set clear timelines of both writing the document and your action items. And you want to involve the right people. In the earlier example of emailing, let's say code, the people involved in the incident aren't necessarily the best ones or the right ones to implement the solution, right? So by understanding what the improvement is, you might involve the right people for enablement, for awareness, for training, for improving the mechanism that is out there now. So always keep that in mind. Again, focus on systems and processes and not necessarily on the individuals, and share the learnings widely. I'll reiterate that our COEs are read at the Andy Jassy level, at the Matt Garman level in their meetings, and DeSantis has his own for AWS Ops, where we 2 hours reading COEs and COEs, and there are thousands of employees that join those calls, and we get to learn from incidents and take it back to our teams. And even smaller teams have a reading. The intention is to make this public, share the learnings, and celebrate the culture of escalation. All right. So our takeaways today, I talked about how whenever we encounter incidents and address threat detection and incident response, we want to transform these security pains into organizational gains. How can we make our company better, our teams better, as a result of what we have encountered? How to really get to the root causes of why an incident occurred. I want to re-highlight that in this, we talked about 5 whys, we talked about a fishbone visual, and we talked about the Toyota method, which is CDAC. These help provide a structure analysis. And I'll reiterate that never did I mention the individual in any of those visuals. I think that really helps the individual know when I walk into these conversations, I don't have to feel bad that I messed up. I just know that we're going to focus the conversation on the mechanisms that led to this, maybe what gaps in our existing mechanisms need to be improved as a result of this incident. So it's not about the individual, it's about processes. My favorite, using the information for intelligence. We want to aggregate insights to get ahead to security vulnerabilities, and also within the organization or maybe externally. Embrace a fail-fast culture. When we have an incident, we quickly address it, we try to resolve it, write about the COE, move on to the next thing. So fail-fast culture helps us. Fail-fast allows us to build a culture of resilience. Okay, so I gave you a lot of information. I hope you have found it useful, and I think we're at a good point where we can start now, and we can look at your most recent incident and try to apply this process. I'm gonna wrap it up with this visual again. Here, heart is asking brain, hey, let's address life, let's bring it on, go through the same mistakes. Did we do it wrong again? We may never know. I think now I've demonstrated to you, you can know. You can not only know, but you can do something about it and avoid going through the swamp again. And take a snap of the QR code so you can follow the Awkward Yeti for other fun stories. And thank you so much for your time. Please take a look at the survey, give us some feedback. I'm happy to help anyone if you're interested in implementing this at your company. I do this for Amazon, and I enjoy sharing this learning. So thank you for your time.